And this is brutal, right? This is like disgusting. Everybody on there is having the same reaction you're having right now. It's like, your stomach, you have a pit in there because you feel for these women and this abuse, and it's a horrific thing that is done to anybody for any reason at all. It makes you sick. What Diddy did, this is his defense attorney, right, is indefensible. He can't defend that at all. I can't defend that. But the video that you'll watch is not evidence of trafficking at all. Day one, Diddy trial. Jury selection completed. We've got opening statements and more being reported courtesy of Matthew Russell Lee, Inner City Press reporting, who is there reporting from the scene in the Southern District of New York. Now we're waiting for the trial to get underway. It's 8:37 in the morning. We're in New York, starting to warm up there. Now Sean Diddy has still not been seen in the courtroom yet at 8:37 in the morning. Lawyers are milling around, sound of rustling paper in the background. Brian Steele, you know him from Georgia and the Fannyland saga, comes up to prosecutor Maureen Comey, James Comey's daughter, who handled the Ghislaine Maxwell case, and they shake hands. Good morning, Maureen. Oh, good morning, Brian. Another defense attorney, Agnifilo and Alexandra Shapiro, are also conferring. As soon as the day gets started, we're going to issue our peremptory challenges, our strikes to get rid of jurors on the panel. 8:53 happens minutes later. Diddy enters the courtroom. Murmured silences as he takes his seat. He's wearing a light sweater instead of last week's dark blue. He turns and blows a kiss to family members in the second row of the gallery. Mom catches it and saves it. 8:56. Clerk of the court comes out. Are the parties ready? Yes, says the prosecution. We are, ma'am, says the defense. Clerk asks Diddy a question. Mr. Combs, were you able to get some water? We made arrangements for that. He shakes his head and slurps very satisfactorily. Then the courtroom bursts open. All rise. Not yet, actually. Judge is still not coming to the courtroom. False alarm. That was just a clerk. I hate when that happens. 9:03 a.m. Defense attorneys, Agnifilo, Tenny Garagos, are poring over papers. They're looking at the peremptory challenges. They're going to strike these prospective jurors in a minute. Combs is seated there, wearing reading glasses. He's also looking down at papers, studying the names. 3 of the 6 prosecutors of the 6-pack of white women are looking at or typing on their cell phones, maybe Instagram posts. 9:26 a.m. Defense attorney Agnifilo, Maureen Comey are the ones in with Judge Submaranian. They're back behind the scenes in the judge's chambers discussing what's happening, presumably doing the peremptory strikes there. Now, in the New York State Court, this is all done in public on the record. In the state courts, we're going to see what happens when they come back. And we're off. Door bursts open. Clerk says, all rise. Please stand. We're all stand. And then we're seated. Judge says, good morning, everybody. Hope your weekend was amazing. Welcome back. All right, we're going to begin here with the peremptory challenges. We're going to go one at a time here and back and forth. And we'll begin with you, the government. Ms. Comey. Your Honor, we strike juror 51, defense. Your Honor, 52 and 106. Madam Comey. We strike 216, Your Honor, defense. 157 and 112. Comey. We strike 118, Judge, defense. 127, 131, and the list goes on. Now we get back to Comey, and as they strike 81 and 149 and 161, Maureen says, Your Honor, the defense was only supposed to strike 1 in this round. He says, oh, okay, fine. We strike only 22 then. Well, we strike 163, and we strike 84, and the list continues. Comey. Judge, I believe he was supposed to strike in the alternative on that one. She might be right, Your Honor. Let me check. Defense attorney speaks with latest addition to the team, Nicole Westmoreland. Your Honor, 218 is what we've decided. Prosecution, 324. Defense, 240. Comey, 281. The defense now says, Your Honor, we just have one moment, please, while we just look at something. Judge says, yes, please make it quick. Defense attorney and the team, scruffling around the papers, making notes. Your Honor, I hate to do this, but I just want to note here that the government, by our calculations, has struck 7 black people out of 9 of their strikes. Judge says, okay, I'll give you a chance to raise that, okay, but let's continue. He says, okay, that's just our calculation. All right, well, we're going to strike 307, Judge. Judge says, okay, so our jurors then are going to be 2, 5, 25, 28, and more, all the way up to 330. That's the panel. The defense for Diddy says, Your Honor, that cannot be the panel. This is ridiculous. I brought it up before. You can't seat these people. We just watched the 6-pack of white women prosecutors, Maureen Comey and the 5 other white chicks, strike 7 black people over this last little pattern here. That is a pattern of racial discrimination, and I demand a correction of the panel. The judge says, well, it sounds like an application has been made under Batson saying that you're using your strikes to racially create conflicted jury. Miss Comey, Maureen, would you like to address what they just accused you of, you racist white chick? She said, well, no, Your Honor. All of our decisions here are neutral, okay? We made the decisions not because of the color of their skin at all. Says, here's why. I'll give you an explanation for all of them. Here's why. Juror 51, black person, knew 17 of the names on the list and appeared to have seen the movie called Making the Band, has a relative with law enforcement issues, and so we struck that black person. The next strike, he harassed a police officer, and he didn't report it. So his sister had an issue, and this clears the bar too. And these are good reasons, so we got rid of that black guy. Now, Juror 81, says the prosecutor, we think they claim to have special knowledge of bipolar issues, and obviously he doesn't, so he's gone. 161, he said he watched the news about the case that morning. He said it was inevitable that he'd watch. He said he'd lose 30% of his income, but he wants on, and he has an agenda, so we struck him, even though he's black. They're all black. We struck 163 too, I believe for cause. He can't even speak English, and he had a relative who shot a police officer, for crying out loud, Judge. And among the alternates, we barred a person who went to Mr. Combs High School. The next one, 324, that dude has sleep apnea, and he also called the police a-holes, so we struck him too. That's why, not because he's black, because he called the cops a-holes. And 281, she said victims can catch a case and jump on a bandwagon, so we think she has an agenda too. So these easily clear Batson. We have an independent basis to strike these people. We're not racist, even though there's 6 white chicks over here. So we easily clear the bar, right? And the judge says, you know, I agree. Absolutely. That's right. Very good explanation there. Judge says, I deny your claims of racism in the jury panel. These were not based on purposeful discrimination. The fact that they're like, you know, most of them are black, nothing to do with it. Like, anything more? Nothing from us, says Diddy. The judge says, all right, well, we're going to bring the jury in a few minutes. 10:17 a.m. Jurors are seated. Judge Submaranian says, all right, welcome back, everybody. Glad to have you here. All right, this is the time set for the case U.S. versus Sean Combs, case number CR 20 whatever presiding. We will provide lunch to you, ladies and gentlemen, in the jury room. Here's what the day is going to look like. You've been called here, selected for this great civic service and blah, blah. Now, as you know, we're not going to release your names to the public, but you do have to swear in. Please stand, raise your right hand. Clerk swears in the jurors. You got this solemn duty. Now, questions, the judge says, let me give you some ground rules here as you serve on the jury. And there's usually like a long soliloquy here. Inner City Press shortened it up for us. Says, just to be clear, questions are not evidence. Only the answers given by the witnesses and documents are evidence. You can consider circumstantial evidence. Here's what circumstantial evidence is. Like someone walking in with a dripping umbrella. You can surmise that it's raining outside, but you didn't see that it was raining, but from the circumstances, oh, they've got an umbrella and it's dripping. You can presume it's raining. You're allowed to do that. Now, the judge says, a witness here, and the fact that they use a pseudonym does not mean that their testimony is worthy of less weight. And you're going to hear from cops, and just because they're wearing a badge doesn't mean that they're less weight or more weight. Now, during the trial, do not read or view anything or listen or look at or anything to anything about this case, and don't post anything either. Once the U.S. rests, because the prosecutors will go first, the defense can present their case. They're not obligated to present their case. If he chooses to do so, he can. If not, you can't hold that against them and more. Now, we're going to begin with opening statements from the prosecutor. Government, you may begin. Maureen Comey, stay seated. Prosecutor Johnson, white gal, stands up to deliver opening arguments in the Diddy trial. She looks at the jurors, very solemnly says, this is Sean Combs. To the public, he was a cultural icon, a businessman, larger than life. You may remember him. You may have even listened to his music. You may have seen him in movies and on TV shows. But despite all of that and all of that good feeling energy you might have buried in your brain, there was another side to him, to Diddy. And you're going to hear about 20 years of his crimes. But he didn't act alone. He had a team to help him. And with his team, he committed a series of crimes: kidnapping, arson, drugs, and other crimes. And this is the base layer for the RICO, right? This is why they have to bundle these up into RICO. They didn't charge him individually for these things, but they're bundling it up. Now, let's start with one night. Diddy was on the hunt, but not just for anybody, for his girlfriend, Cassie. He forced her to do things with male escorts while he watched and recorded it. And now, at one point after this long train of abuse where he was doing this, he found out that Cassie, his girlfriend, was seeing another man. And furious, he set out to find them. Now, he woke an employee to drive to the house. He said, he went out, get up, but no one was there. But he didn't give up. He kept looking for Cassie. And when he found her, when he tracked down where she was, he beat her, and he beat her brutally. He kicked her in the back, and he flung her around like a rag doll. But that wasn't enough. He told her that he could release these videos of her having intercourse with other men. He broke into a man's house, and he beat and blackmailed his girlfriend. But these are not his only crimes. You're going to see evidence of that today, but there is much more behind the darkness. Saying Cassie's not the only woman he beat and exploited. He's been doing this for 20 years. He had a business that he used as cover to enable all of these crimes. Bad Boy Records. You may have heard of it. That made him right. He relied on his bodyguards, managers. He had a chief of staff. He ran all aspects of his life through that org company. And the group promoted his power. His bodyguards were in on this. They kidnapped an employee. You're going to hear they set a car on fire. They even dangled a person off a building and out a window. But that's not all. They delivered drugs whenever he said, to wherever he said to deliver them, including to women that he forced to have intercourse with other people. He transported them across state lines and even out of the country. And the prosecutor says, ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear what this case is. This case is not about a celebrity's private preferences in what they do. This was criminal. He coerced people and he even used violence. And along this trial, we're going to focus on two women. So maybe the third victim is gone. Cassie and Jane were the two victims you're going to hear from here. Now, we will show that the defendant, Diddy, used, lied, drugs, threats, and violence to force all of these people to have intercourse in front of male escorts. Now, he didn't think they were a big deal. He called them freak-offs. He called them wild king nights, or he called them hotel nights. His staff organized the flights. They organized the cars and the hotels. At his direction, they set up the room with baby oil, lubricants, and lightings. The staff came in with cash. They paid these people off and they gave them drugs. And he made everybody in there, forced them to take MDMA or Molly or ecstasy. It made them sick, of course, but it also made them kind of aroused. And he directed every step. He expected the women to appear to enjoy themselves. And he, enjoyed himself and recorded the events. And that was at a time when Cassie was 19 with a hit song. Now, she tried to work on her music, but Diddy made her turn down many opportunities. She was trying to advance her career. She recorded stuff, but he had the final say over the music she released. This was never, and what there never was, another album. And what ended up happening, despite promises that he would help her career and all the things, he kicked her in the head and he dragged her by the hair down a hallway and he stomped on Cassie's face in an SUV. And then he made her stay in a hotel for a week to hide her injuries. He set up Diddy freak-offs as often as once a week. She spent half her time in these freak-offs. She wanted to write music. Diddy made an escort even urinate in her face. This is very graphic opening argument. Juries are sitting there going, oh my gosh, like this is disgusting. He beat her when he thought she took too long in the bathroom. It never stopped. Defying him would end in violence. She fled, but he found her. With the help of his inner circle, he found her. Cassie's career was in his hands. He told her he could destroy her career simply by releasing a video. Now, when he said to have a freak off, she knew she had no choice. I had to. She called the escort. She put on the performances that Diddy wanted. Her safety depended on keeping him happy. Now, it's true. The relationship was complicated. Like, you're going to see that. Both of these people were unfaithful with one another, but only one of them had any power in this thing. Diddy made Cassie do his bidding in those dark hotel rooms. Cassie was not the only one either, by the way. This was a pattern. And let me tell you about the next woman called Jane. She was a single mom that started spending time with Diddy in 2020. She fell in love with him, even though he was seeing other women. One night, he told Jane about these freak-off parties, and he made it happen immediately. He took her to a hotel where an escort was on the way. He directed her step by step. Now, Jane thought it was a one-time wild night, but she was wrong. It continued. He was offering a real relationship, she thought. So then the dude shows up. Jane said, I want him to wear protection, but he said no. Jane tried to make it through these nights without the drugs. The first time she broke down, took ecstasy to finish. Another time she vomited, but he said, just go do it again, keep going. Jane found two men and invited them to join the freak-offs so she could choose the man, that she'd be intimate with. She didn't like that first dude, so let me go find some other two dudes. Diddy discouraged her from working. He had the power to coerce her back in the hotel rooms, and he threatened her with the release of the videos. Now, the prosecutor continues in her opening statement saying, not even a year ago, Diddy went to her house, She was angry, and guess what? She hit him. So yeah, Diddy gets hit by her, but then Diddy became enraged, and she tried to hide. So she locked herself in a bedroom. Diddy kicked it open, then went to the bathroom, the closet, the guest bedroom. He kicked her to the ground. Violence. And he didn't just leave her be. He said, you're not going to F up my night, he said. Call up an escort and perform for me. So Jane did it. His violence got him what he wanted, and she tried to hide. Jane followed his instructions, and I'm going to tell you about the time that he forced himself on her. There was also this other person called Mia, an employee. You're going to hear from her today, ladies and gentlemen, during this trial. And she's going to tell you how Diddy forces himself on her, put his hand up her dress, and violated her. And amidst all this violence, he and his inner circle worked to cover up his crimes. The video at the LA hotel, you're going to hear everything about that and just how far this went. Now, Diddy also offered a hotel security guard a wad of cash. He said, here you go, take this money. And a brown paper bag, 100 G's in $100 bills. The inner circle kept Cassie in hiding for days. For all of this, he's charged with multiple federal crimes, ladies and gentlemen. Everything you heard, including racketeering. Now, you're going to hear from these two women, and they're going to tell you of the most painful experiences of their lives. And you're going to hear from some of Diddy's employees, including his personal assistant, Mia, who he also assaulted. She's still grappling with this. Now, you're also going to hear from the employee he forced into an SUV with a gun, from a chef. They worked punishing hours at times without sleep. They bought drugs for him. They were expected to keep quiet. Some of these witnesses have already received settlements. And you're also going to see text messages in which Diddy tells staff to bring cash for them, and by Jane saying she didn't want to do these freak-offs. You're going to see the videos too. And in them, you're going to hear Diddy provide direction to everybody. Cassie and Jane, who are both high. They got the video. Now, you'll see a video of the defendant brutally beating Cassie during a freak-off. You will see photos of the damage, including 4 doors in her homes not even a year ago. You're going to see what he had in his home. Guns, med bags of drugs, lube, everything. And you're going to see the agreement with the hotel guard, barring him from speaking after he got paid 100 G's for the video. You're going to hear him manipulating Jane into saying she wanted it. His threats not to pay her for her home, text to his staff about it, and more. So, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up the prosecutor, and this is brutal, right? This is like disgusting. Everybody on there is having the same reaction you're having right now. It's like, your stomach, you have a pit in there because you feel for these women and this abuse, and it's a horrific thing that is done to anybody for any reason at all. It makes you sick. So she says, I ask you to do these 3 things. And we cleaned this up, by the way. So I'm sure this was a lot more intensive and vulgar, actual language of genital things, like aggressive. Probably shock and awe was the strategy. What's our approach? Shock and awe. All right, let's do it. And you will reach a verdict. Says, pay attention to the evidence, ladies and gentlemen. Follow the judge's instructions on the law. Use your common sense. And you will reach the verdict that Sean Combs is guilty. Prosecutor Johnson sits back down. Judge says, who's going to be doing the opening argument for the defense? Tenny Garagos is going to do this. Female comes out and says, ladies and gentlemen, that was a story. But let me tell you what this case is actually about. This case here is about love, jealousy, and money. And you call that the triad, right? The 3s. Very good. I think Glenn Spence teaches that. You frame it out in a trilogy. Love, jealousy, money. You can go through it. Here's what they're trying to do. They are trying to turn all of this into a racketeering case. And it's not going to work. You are the jury. You are going to evaluate the witnesses. And finally, this whole story can come out because you've only heard a piece of it. We can't wait to tell you the rest. This case isn't about what you heard on the news. And there's been a lot on the news, but none of it is accurate. Sean Combs is a fascinating person. I'll be the first to tell you. He's here. There's a lot of depth to this guy, and he's had a fascinating life. Let me tell you about him. Diddy, she's probably touching him on the shoulder, humanizing him. He grew up in Harlem, and he built a lawful business. He worked hard for it. He started out making records and on 8-track tapes and blah, 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 and he created a culture, and he produced music that changed an entire generation. Many of you might listen to it today or know some of his artists. Witnesses that you're going to hear from throughout the course of this trial are going to share with you that he is a fascinating person and that people are drawn to him. Now, if you wanted to climb in music, in apparel, or beverages, you wanted to work your way up, you wanted to be around Sean Diddy Combs, he gave people opportunities to work at his company, and he had a vision that few had in this industry. Now, what you're going to hear when these witnesses come out and vouch on his behalf is that they mostly loved him. And the text messages will show that too. He was enamored by his team. Now, a little bit more about Diddy. He's 55 years old. He is going to be Sean Combs. Now, I am Tenny Garagos, and I am honored to represent him. I bet she's right behind him. The only people in this courtroom who will tell you about racketeering are the prosecutors, because that's what they need to do in order to make their case. They just made it up. Like this idea that there's a conspiracy and this ongoing fraud. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, there was no conspiracy at all, okay? This case is about Sean Combs' private sex life. Now, the government has no business in that at all. If he wants to freak off with baby oil, that's fine. Today's America. You can do that. These hardworking individuals were educated. They went to Harvard. They went to Howard. And Diddy has a temper, okay? And I'll admit, he got violent. You're going to see that. No one's denying that here. We're not proud of that. He's not proud of that. But the violence is not what he's been charged for. But we own it. We own the violence. In fact, I'll tell you, Diddy will admit himself. He says sometimes he gets so jealous and and angry that Diddy will even admit he gets out of control. You're going to hear that he lied to his girlfriends, and you're going to hear a bunch of things that are bad, infidelity and all these things. Now, you may think he's a jerk or mean, okay? You might not like it. You might think he's disgusting or the freak-offs are gross or whatever, but he's not being tried for being a jerk or for being mean, okay? He's being tried. The charges on this indictment are for running a racketeering enterprise, a whole enterprise. It's not that at all. Domestic violence is a different charge. It's not trafficking. Trafficking is a big deal. Had he been charged with domestic violence, okay, fine. We would not be sitting through an 8-week trial here. Charge him with a misdemeanor or a felony domestic violence assault case, and we go through that. We are going to take on accountability, and we will not shy away from any of that, okay? We know what we did. We're here being responsible for our crimes, but trafficking, RICO, racketeering, that's not what he did. Now, it is true, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, it's true. And again, this is a woman speaking. He had a bit of a different sex life, okay? I'll admit it. The alleged victims, though, in this case, they were not being exploited. They were not being taken advantage of, as their little sob story will tell you. They were all getting something from him, okay? They are adults. They knew what they were doing, and they must take responsibility for their lives like he does for his. A free choice has pros and cons, and you're going to get a chance to evaluate all these women, and you're going to hear and be able to verify their credibility. Every one of them is going to come before you, and what you're going to see is when this all comes down to it, they made free choices, and not just once or twice, they did it every day for years. They were hanging out with Diddy, living it up. Now, you need to ask yourself, ladies and gentlemen, what are all the ways this individual had the ability to make these choices? Are they just incapable of thinking for themselves? Ask yourselves, what is this person getting here? Ask yourself, what do they want? These are two different questions, but ask yourself because they may differ. Now, the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, jealousy drove the choices of the victims. They weren't forced into anything. They wanted to be with Diddy. Combs never married, but he is a many women man, okay? He's always in multiple relationships, and he was not always honest with them either. And it drove jealousy, primal jealousy. These women were enamored, and so is Sean Combs. He is extremely jealous. Now, you might think it's hypocritical for him to be jealous when he's in older relationships, but he doesn't want his women with anybody else. And what you're going to learn is that these women who were hanging with Diddy, they weren't victims of anything. They remained in multi-year relationships with him. These women were in love with him. Infidelity and jealousy drove all this violence. There was alcohol, there was drugs involved. It drove all the things. All of that you might disagree with or have a problem with. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This is not racketeering, and he is not a racketeer. This case is about relationships with Cassie and Jane. And you're going to hear about those. And you're going to hear about a bunch of things. Some of it might make you uncomfortable. They will testify about things that should never be heard in a federal courtroom. That he liked to watch. Now, you may not like that, but you are not here to judge him for his preferences or if you think he's disgusting. A wealthy rapper paid for these women's homes. He paid for their vacations. He's not charged with being a flawed individual. These women fought hard to be in a relationship with him. And Cassie, I expect you're going to hear from her this week. She was in an 11-year relationship with him. 11 years! Combs was also with Kim Porter, the mother of his 4 children, and he continued with her until she died from pneumonia in 2018. And his fights with Cassie were about cheating. It was a toxic relationship, it's true, but they loved each other. And she is going to tell you, Cassie, because we're going to ask her about this, about the jealousy of Diddy's baby mama, Kim, and then Gina. She was always jealous. The day of the hotel hallway, that incident, it was jealousy. You're going to see it. It was jealousy on display. Violence by the elevator bank 10 years ago, you're going to hear about that too. Again, drawing the sting, right? He beat her there. He beat her there. You're going to see it later today. What Diddy did, this is his defense attorney, right, is indefensible. He can't defend that at all. I can't defend that. But the video that you'll watch is not evidence of trafficking at all. Cassie walked out of the hotel room with 2 bags. Combs come down wearing only a towel. He stops her. He drags her by the hoodie. He comes back around to get a phone. But what causes a fight about a phone? Well, as we know, ladies and gentlemen, phones keep secrets of infidelity. And as soon as he gets the phone, he sits down. He's visibly disgusted. Cassidy, as you'll see in the video, calls security, and you're going to hear from him later today, security. The guard tells him to leave the public area, and you're going to see Cassie telling him to get back to the hotel room. They stay together 2 more years after this incident. It wasn't a fight. She saw a photo of Combs with Gina. He started with her in 2014, and she had a choice. Every single day, Cassie could have left, but she didn't leave. Every single day, she stayed with him. That was her better choice. She wanted that for herself. Until she broke up with him, she broke up. She wasn't coerced. When she left, there were no repercussions. So what's all this fear of running away? why? She can't leave. She can't make another decision. She did. She broke up with him. He's gone. He didn't do anything to her. She ran into the arms of a physical trainer Combs had hired to train her. Oh, wow. Now, the only freak-offs you're going to see at this trial were on her phone, not his. She recorded it. In November 2018, Kim Porter passed away from pneumonia, Diddy's baby mama. Cassie did everything she could to be there for him. She flew to Georgia, and even amidst the breakup, she still flew to be there with him. Combs, Diddy said, Kim was my soulmate, and she passed. The end of that relationship between Combs and Cassie was triggered by that. Cassie realized all the things she could never be to Diddy. She wanted to be the Combs' wife and the love of his life. She spent 11 years trying to get that position, but she couldn't get it, and she got mad. And Cassie married the trainer and then got pregnant with her third child. Now, think about this. Evaluate Combs' intent at that time for those 11 years. The messages will show that she was a willing participant in these freak-offs. Her testimony this week can't change that, okay? The text messages show she was into it. She was organizing it more. And then, when we talk about Jane, in 2020, Combs became more upfront. He told Jane that he was dating other women. She was still jealous, though. She wanted all this to be public. I know, he's my man. Now, he said, well, how about we have party of 3? So they did. They went to a private hotel, and I expect her, when she comes back, to say she enjoyed it, because we're going to ask her about that too. Now, Jane was desperate to be with him, to give him things others couldn't. She tried to make it more than just intercourse. Now, I'm not sure how she's going to put it when she comes in to testify, but it always came back to parties in the hotel rooms, right? This was their time together. She was facilitating all of it. And Jane did it for the cuddle. Funny line there. She wanted to make him happy. She was unable to resist him emotionally. There was a phone call in November, even after it. She flew out to see him many more times. It was toxic, but she kept going. And being a willing participant in your life is not trafficking, okay? If she'd walked away, she would have lost him. You will see her jealousy. She wouldn't want that. You would see him on social media with another woman, and she would send messages of regret, okay? None of this is coerced at all. Now, she was driven to try to be in first place. Jane wanted to be the #1 woman. This was the way to try to get there. Now, that's not a crime to go have hotel parties. There was a night a year ago when Jane hit Combs. She punched Diddy. Now, it was born out of jealousy, and he hit her back, and she was overcome by jealousy, and she slammed her head. So she started it when this came out. She also slammed Diddy's head into the kitchen counter. Months later, she flew to see him, and she invited an escort over. She'll call it one of her best nights. She'll call it a wild king night. Whatever you want to call it. She's going to testify about how amazing it was. This will be hard to watch. They are, in one word, let's just say intimate, okay? Now, the government told you about someone named Mia, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that? Now, why are they making these allegations now? Why they just bring up Mia out of nowhere? Well, you're going to conclude that everyone has a motive. And with Mia, you're going to say, she never said it before, nor when she first started cooperating with the government. She just popped up out of nowhere because they lost their other victim. So if this was so hostile, why didn't any of these people call the police? They are vindictive. That's why. Because their motive is simple. They're here for money, ladies and gentlemen. Before any of this started, by the way, Cassie, one of the victims you're going to hear from, she filed a public lawsuit in November 2023. She was living in her parents' modest home in Connecticut at the time. She went to a civil lawyer because she wanted that money. Now, the civil lawyer is here today. They went to civil lawyers to make a money grab. In fact, Cassie demanded $30 million of Diddy. Another asked for $22 million of Diddy. How many millions of reasons do these witnesses have to lie? Oh, millions. Now, the evidence will not make out the charges. They won't match, as you'll see. Now, when they talk about bribery and this other stuff, like about bribing the clerk or the security guard, let me talk about that. Now, on bribery, this is about the Intercontinental Hotel. He paid a security guard to make the footage go away. This was solely to prevent bad publicity for both of them, not just for Diddy, but for Cassie too. There was no law enforcement investigation. The whole thing went away. Now, the kidnapping related to an employee, they say. She worked for him for 10 years. She asked to work for him again. So he kidnapped her? Wait, he kidnapped somebody who then asked to be rehired later? All right. And also trafficking of drugs? That was for personal use. This isn't a drug case. They worked hard. They partied hard. They were there to do something great and novel. It's drugs. It's not trafficking. It's not RICO to do drugs. So let me be clear, ladies and gentlemen. There was no conspiracy here. Diddy was paying different men for their time and their experience. Actors who do these things get paid. Hulkamania, Cowboys for Angels. You can pay money for time and an experience. That's all Sean was doing. Now, you, ladies and gentlemen, are not here to impose your morality on this man. If you listen, you'll find him not guilty of these crimes that are charged because he did not commit these crimes. Thank you. Judge says, all right, anything before we begin here, parties? Brian Steele, Diddy's defense team, says, yes, Your Honor. We will be objecting to 2 exhibits that the government is going to introduce today. Judge says, oh, all right. Well, like this morning, in the future, I'd like to hear this the day before they're going to use them. So give me some time. Government says, Your Honor, we only just learned that they objected. Like, what? We need those exhibits. This is about an incident report about the hotel hallway and a broken vase. The report has an addendum in it. And we want to introduce that so they can read it. Sorry, Your Honor. We object. In the third paragraph, he writes that he did not want Mr. Combs to see Cassie out in front. And he talks about a coworker called Adey, A-D-E-Y, that Mr. Combs is about to yell. And he says that's about to yell. And that's speculation in there. So you can't come in because it's bad evidence. The judge says, all right, Miss Slavic, please pass up the exhibits. I'll take a look at them over lunch. We're adjourned for the morning. They take a break, they eat lunch, and we're back. Judge says, all right, before we begin, in terms of the objection, defense attorney, 1 second, Your Honor, we're still waiting for Diddy. He's waiting to come back. Oh, sorry about that. Yep, you're right. Diddy comes back into the courtroom. The judge says, okay, so we're on this conversation about these exhibits. One exhibit the defense is objecting to, and what I'll say is if the U.S. government prosecutors lay the proper foundation against Diddy, then we can admit that, but you got to lay the foundation for it. We'll get there when we get there. Now, the exhibit with the added note, the objection is well taken, and so that is excluded. With the addendum about speculation, that's out, so Diddy wins that one. All right, anything else? Nope, no, thank you, Your Honor. All right, let's bring the jury back in. All rise, jury's in, we're seated. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to begin our case. Opening statements are now over, and the judge asks the prosecutor, is the government ready to call its first witness, Ms. Comey? We are, Your Honor. Before we call our first witness, we move to enter 4 exhibits. Any objection? No objection, Your Honor. So admitted. Your Honor, we call, this is the prosecutor speaking, LAPD officer Israel Flores. He's sworn in. Mr. Flores to the bench. Good morning, sir. Promise to tell the truth, don't show me God? I do. Mr. Flores, can you tell me about your background? Says the prosecutor. Certainly. I am a reservist for the Army. I was a guard with the Securitas in 2016, and I was at the Intercontinental Hotel near Century City when I was on duty. Thank you. And can you tell me what happened on March 5th, 2016? Certainly. I was told of the 6th floor incident, and so I went up to the 6th floor, took the elevator up there, and I recognized Sean Combs. He was sitting there in the hallway wearing a gray sweater. And what was your title at the time? I was the assistant director of security at the time. All right, I want to show you a photo of the Intercontinental Hotel. You recognize it? He says, yeah, it's shaped like a pyramid. Move to admit, admitted. What kind of incidents did you respond to when you were working there? Oh, all kinds. We had a couple of suicides there. We'd prepare incident reports, you know, the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why. Would you attach photos to the reports? Yes, I would, but I wouldn't attach video because I didn't have access to the software. I didn't have the password to, attach stuff to it. Well, I want to ask you about an incident. When did this incident take place during the day? Like at what time? 11 a.m. I got a report of a woman in distress on the 6th floor. I closed the security base and checked the cameras. There was an African-American man pacing back and forth. I didn't see a female, so I rushed over there, got on the elevator, went up. What did you see when you got to the 6th floor? Security guard says, Mr. Combs was standing there in a towel. Looks like he was wearing some colored socks. He's a rapper and a producer, and there was also Cassie on the floor as well. Prosecutor says, well, let me show you some photos here. There's Diddy standing there in a tuxedo, and in a separate photo, Cassie Ventura is smiling. See these? Well, what did you tell these people? It says that is they were arguing. They'd have to take it back to their room. Hey, you guys are making a lot of noise. Take it back to your room. And that the broken vase would be charged to your room. Cassie said, well, I want to get my phone in my bag. She said, I want to leave. Security guard said, Mr. Combs said, oh, you're not leaving. I saw inside the room, there was a male black wearing dark clothing inside the room. Okay, so what did Mr. Combs do after Cassie left? Well, he called for me and he was holding a stack of money. He said, hey, don't tell anybody about what happened here. And what did you say when he gave you that stack of hundreds, 100 G's? I said, I don't want your money, man. The damage is going to be charged to your room, so you're good. Where did Cassie go? Well, after I spoke with her, she left. The car pulled up. She left in a black SUV. Was there a driver? Yeah, 7 feet. He said, she wants to leave. I said, I'm talking to her, not you. And they left. Then what? Well, then we went up to Mr. Combs' room to remind him of the hotel rules. He opens the door, grabs the phone and says, are you recording me? So I pinned him to the wall. So he pins Diddy to the wall. Flores says, I took photos of the broken vase and I tell them, you guys come clean this up. And I went to write the incident report. Is this the report here? You recognize it? Yeah, that's my report with my name on it. All right, Your Honor, we move to admit. Your Honor, objection noted. Did you review the video, Mr. Flores, after all this happened? Yes, I did. And I'm handing you a thumb drive with the videos on it. Is this the video that you watched? Yeah. Did it have any audio when you watched it? No. Okay, let's walk through the video. Who is this? That's Cassie. And this? That's Mr. Combs. And what's happening here? She picked up the wall phone on the hotel door. And what did you find when you got there? There was a broken vase. And what is at the end of this video? That's me coming out of the elevator right there. And let's pull up the incident report again here. He says, yeah, right there. We reminded him that checkout time was approaching and it's time to go. What did you add to the incident report after you reviewed the video? Well, I wrote in there what I saw. What else did you do with the video? I recorded 2 videos of it with my iPhone to show my wife at home. Shut up. Honey, check this out. Crazy. Flores Flores' video of the video with his voiceover, including about how shiny his shoes were, is played for the jury, showing his wife. Did you work the next day? No, I had the next 2 days off. When you did come back in, did you look for the video? Yeah, I did. All right. And says, but the video was gone. Did you ever see it again? Yes, recently I did. Nothing further. Cross, Brian Steele comes up. Nice to see you, Mr. Flores. Now, you said your report was the 5 W's, right? Who, what, when, where, why? Is that right? Yeah. And you mentioned that when you got off the elevator at 11:14 or 11:15, you said you described Mr. Combs as having a devilish expression on his face. Is that right? Devilish is what you said? Well, that's my opinion. And when you get off the elevator, what's in your hand? That was my radio. Mr. Combs didn't attack you, did he? No. And was there any law enforcement involvement at all? No. And you videoed this for your wife and you kept it, right? I did. But never was law enforcement called, right? No, they were not. Now, you told the jury that Mr. Combs said to Cassie, he says, you're not leaving. But your report didn't say that, right? You just said that now, but it wasn't in your report. Is that right? Well, at that point, I did not believe it was a significant fact. I'm not going to put down the back and forth. I didn't think it was relevant. So it wasn't important 9 years ago, but it's important now, is what you're saying. Objection! Overruled. Well, I did not put it in the report at the time. That's all I can say. Got it. So you said you were offered a bribe, right? But hadn't you told him he had to pay for the vase? Yes, I did. So the gentleman you say you saw in the room, you described it to the jury, but it's not in your report, right? You just said it, but you didn't write it. Well, he didn't engage with me at the time. How come you didn't ask him his name? Like, aren't you supposed to investigate this? Like, did you ask him anything? Well, he wasn't talking to no one. Did you tell anyone at the time about any of this? No. And the 7-foot driver, do you know who that was? No, I don't know, but Cassie knew him. Okay. And you didn't put in your report that you offered to call law enforcement, but she refused. Like, you didn't say that. Why not? Well, she said, no, don't call law enforcement. So there was no reason to include it. You also said that you put Diddy, Mr. Combs, up against the wall. That's pretty aggressive, isn't it? Well, I mean, it could be, but I only put my forearm against his chest. Yeah, but you didn't put that in your report, did you? Well, you're asking me to have put more detail in my report. I just didn't put much detail in there. So what? Okay. Well, it's for memory, you know, it's why we generally write reports. Do you remember the layout of the room? No, just a corner room. Was it like a normal hotel room like I would stay in, or was it just one room? Or did it have a living room? I don't know. So the third party, you said he was on a bed? Well, it was a pullout. Okay. Now you were in the hospitality business as well as security, right? Yes. And Mr. Combs, now it was clear to you that he wanted to pay for the damage, right? Objection, calls for speculation. He says, ask it in a different way. It can be embarrassing for objection sustained. One moment. Anything else? Nothing further. All right, redirect. Brian Steele is done and prosecutor is back up. Mr. Flores, did you typically include every single detail in a report? No. Did Diddy seem drunk or high to you? No. When he offered you money, what did he say? That he didn't want anyone to know about it, pretty much. Which way was he dragging Cassie? Back towards his room. Nothing further. Recross. Brian Steele's back up. Mr. Flores, now these are motion sensitive cameras in the hotel, right? Yeah. So there's gaps in the recording, right? Yes. Nothing further. Thank you. Judge says, next witness, security guard is done. They call someone else. Looks like it might be an escort. Comey asks the question to the witness. What did Miss Ventura pay you for? Witness says, to have intercourse with her. Sean Combs was there too. Now, my boss called me and said he couldn't find any of our black dancers, so I could go to a bachelorette party in Gramercy Park Hotel in downtown Manhattan. All right. So black dancer, some calls need a black dancer come out for a bachelorette party. Gonna go do a helicopter party over there. Well, what did you expect to do? A little stripper dance. But I got there, male dancer. She was in a hotel room in a red wig, stocking and sunglasses. She gave me a few $100s. And what was the room like? Red couches, lubrication. There was a man on the right side of the room, sick. The man had on a white robe and a bandana over his face, below his eyes, and a baseball cap. From his voice, I recognized him as Sean Diddy Combs. Well, what did he say? That he was into importing and exporting. I'm into importing and exporting. The hell kind of phrase is that? The male dancer says, he said he was having problems with my boss. Objection, said the defense. Well, I'll get back to that, says the prosecutor. Now, after your little performance was over, what happened after that? Well, Cassie gave me a couple of $1,000s more. And he said to give them my phone number, and so I did. Cassie called me and asked me for a photo. Well, then what happened? Well, she called me to go back, and so I did for a few hours, and then a few times after that. And Diddy was always there with you? Yeah. Any other locations? Dancer says, yeah, the Essex house. His residence was on 56th Street, I believe 210 at the time, and at her residence on West End Avenue, I think number 10. What name were you to say when you were there to see? Black was the name. Black. What else would you do? Well, I would send her vulgar text messages. Like what? You want me to say it? He's like, you want me to say it right here? Like what I would send her? Well, like give an example. He says like, I'd text her like I want to do this right now. And how often did did you use baby oil? He's like, oh, every time. Love that baby oil. Sean Combs said, we didn't have enough baby oil on. He said, y'all slow down. Separate from each other. One time he tried to have us role play like we had just met at an airport. We weren't good at it, so we skipped on it. He's like, you guys suck at acting. Yeah, I'm an actor, not you. What direction did Mr. Combs give you? He said he'd tell me to step off and back off. How many times, if any, were you told to urinate? Objection! Suggestive! Overruled! Defense is freaking out, right? Objection. They told me not to do it all at once. Objection, Your Honor, to him saying they. Judge says, I got it. Judge is grossed out. Like, oh gosh. Prosecutor's like, well, what happened after the urination? Well, they leave me waiting for hours. He said the whole thing might go on for 10 hours. Dancer says, they were headed to the hotel. They said to go in 30 minutes. It was the first time he opened the doors himself, dressed in a suit, no mask on. Well, how did things change after that? Well, he didn't feel. Objection. Sustained, I'm sure. Who, if anyone, recorded this? He says, oh, Combs did, with the cell phone and camcorder. He took a photo of my driver's license for insurance, he said. Objection. Focus it, says the judge. What did you understand that to mean, right? That he was threatening me. That's why he needed my ID. Once I went and Cassie was slumped over, he said, it's not going to happen this time because she was slumped over. Did Combs offer you drugs? He says, yeah, I think so. Molly, I guess it's called. I don't do drugs. It's called MDMH or MDA, I think. I went out and I handed out $100 bills. Well, how did the Molly make you feel? He says, kind of sick and euphoric and like an idiot handing out $100 bills. Who else was present then? A guy who told me he was an actual escort. He was into having intercourse with Cassie at her apartment, right? She had another dude. So the guy was looking at Combs and Combs said, don't you be looking at me. Objection. Judge says, all right, start over with a fresh question here. Well, what did he look like? It was a black guy, kind of skinny. We exchanged phone numbers, the other dude with Cassie. Have you seen him in 10 years? No. Did it ever seem you were not the first person there? He says, yes. Other people would come before me. There'd be towels on the floor and stuff. Gross. After the $100 bills, did you see them again? He said, no, man, I couldn't do it anymore. What did you get paid when you couldn't perform? Nothing. But I never asked for money. I was happy to get involved with people with such notoriety. But after I saw Sean Combs hit Cassie, I couldn't do it anymore. What was Mr. Combs saying as he met Cassie? He said, B, when I tell you to come over, you come over. I didn't know what to do. Did you intervene? No, I knew the changes there were bodyguards. Objection. Sustained. Well, what happened next? He said, you all ready to continue? Did you try? I don't recall. Did you see them again? I thought I had developed some sort of friendship with Cassie. I may have been speculating, but I don't know. So I went there. I heard him slapping her around. He walked out in a towel. She ran to me on the day of the incident. I asked, why are you staying with this guy? Objection. On what grounds? Hearsay? Overruled. She said it was okay and she had to stay, kind of a thing. So, all right, nothing further. Judge says, all right, jurors, we're going to take a quick break before we return for cross. And the male dancer is Philip. Daniel Phillip is what his name is. Now, welcome back, juror. Jurors are back in the room. They come back from their break. Judge calls the attorneys up for a sidebar. Can I see the attorneys, please? Come up. They return. Judge says, Mr. Phillip, you are still under oath here. Defense attorney Donaldson says, Mr. Phillip, I want to show you a text message exchange between you and Cassie up here. Does this look accurate to you? Yes. Now, you were working for a service, is that right? Yeah. It was called a male review show. And you were a manager. You did male strippers for women? Yeah. And actual intercourse was prohibited. Is that right? At your job? Yeah. Now, your job was to build it up though, right? He says, well, yes and no, kind of. So how about I go with yes then? Says, objection, sustained. All right. Did the company open fake businesses to optimize search results? He says, well, fake addresses. Yeah. It was just SEO. We wanted to show up in more locations for more pimp services. You went to optimize the ladies' experience, right? Well, I have no idea what you mean by that. It's just our slogan, to optimize the ladies' experience. That's what you guys do? Well, it's just a slogan. Now, Cassie told you to say the name Black, right? Like when you showed up, who are you? I'm Black. Okay. Yes. And your boss told someone that you wanted a black man stripper. Is that right? Yes. Well, let me show you this. This shouldn't be put on the screen. Said, well, I don't know what happened here. Your boss told you someone wanted a black man stripper. Yeah. Well, let me show you something. They put it up on the screen. Government says, this shouldn't be put on the screen. Defense says, take it off. Take it off. Asks a question. She was wearing a wig when you got there. Yeah. And she handed you money. Yeah. She handed me $4,000. That was before any oil rubbing occurred. Correct. She had on heels. Yeah. And dark glasses. And where'd the money come from? I don't know. Her hand. You were wearing a New York City Police Department uniform, weren't you? Well, I bought an NYPD t-shirt and you took the oil off in front of Cassie. The oil? No, I mean, I took my clothes off. She said, it's my birthday. And it appears she's enjoying herself. Is that right? Yeah. What was your position? Missionary? I was like, did that just happen? She asked you for a photo? I don't know if Sean Combs asked for it or what. Ignore that, said the judge. And that's it for the day. What a disgusting case this is. Judge says, all right, we're going to end it here for today. I'm going to go take a shower. We'll pick up here tomorrow. And the jury is gone. So Mr. Phillips says, no conversation conversations with the government, Mr. Phillip. Don't talk to them. You're going to be back on the stand tomorrow. Agents are providing him with protection and transport, if that's okay, Judge, because we don't want that dude to get taken out. No talk with your lawyer, says the judge to the witness, and that is the day. So we'll see if the jury buys it, but we're just getting started, and we'll be back with more.